Hello, my name's Paul Cunnington, and I've spent a lot of years studying the mind. I have become a mentor and guide to others who want to learn more about how their mind works. And if you're wondering why I have the shape of an acorn with some wiggly lines going through it, then I'll be explaining about that in a little while. But first, I'd like to explain about why I all of a sudden decided I wanted to study the mind, and it was very much a sudden thing. I had, up until my early 40s, been living, as I found out later on, sort of unconsciously. I suppose some people might have called it living by the seat of your pants. So my life just sort of happened. I'd had a wonderful childhood. It was really good, although there was a lot of shouting and a lot of stress at times during my childhood. And I found that this was something that was going to come back to haunt me in my adulthood. And I would never really call myself bright at school. I was defined once by my wonderful headmistress. She was a lovely lady. And she told a bunch of people when I went to her retirement function that I was one of her students, and she said, "Now Paul's just average, and yet he's done well." And I remember thinking when she said average, and I could have died, to be quite honest. I really could have died. But I found myself all of a sudden in my early 40s, where I was in a not a good place. I would call it a dark place, and I was asking myself what had happened. How did I get here? And I was very confused. And it actually took me some years to find somebody who was able to explain things to me in a way that I could understand as to what happened to me. I'd been to lots of counsellors, I'd been to lots of therapists and all sorts of people. Some of them were really lovely. One of the things I always found was they always wanted to go back into the past. And I remember I went to so many, I used to think to myself, when you had your first meeting, I should perhaps just do a recording telling them about my past. I didn't even need to be there, they could just play it. Anyway, none of that was really getting any traction. And I'd got I still do, I've got a wonderful wife called Janet, and she was amazingly supportive to me. And we both together kept searching for some way to understand why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And one day, a friend of ours became a coach, and they were being trained by somebody who eventually trained me. And I want to share with you some of the things that they shared. The very first few, I think, most important things they shared with me. And this is when I started to feel I was really grasping what had happened to me. And the very first thing my coach asked me was, "Who am I? Who am I?" And I thought, "Who am I?" And I thought, well, I'm Paul. And I was told, "Yeah, but that's just the name that's been given to you. You were something before that." Well, if I look in the mirror and I see my body and everything, that's me. I'm me. This still wasn't right. I wasn't my brain. I don't know. To be honest, I never really thought about it. If someone said to me, who are you? I'd say I'm Paul Cunnington, as I said at the beginning of this video. And then I was told that everything was energy. And I thought, you mean everything else is energy? And of course, this has been discovered by Albert Einstein a long time ago, but for some reason I was oblivious to it. and everything was energy, including us. I was energy. If our eyes were picking up everything that as it really looks, we'd see lots of little bits and pieces of atoms and so forth. And I thought, okay. And then he said, nothing is created or destroyed. And I thought, well, how can I just don't understand that. He then went on to tell me that there is a physical world and a formless world. Now, the person who was telling me at the time, I remember thinking he seems like a really lovely person, but I really think he's lost his marbles. By the way, if someone doesn't know, I come from a time when we used to play with little glass balls. We used to ping them around and hitch. Anyway, so if you don't know what a marble is, then that's just a saying we used to have in England, where if someone's lost their marbles, it means that someone's going to come along with two white jackets, in white jackets, and they're going to take someone away to the, a place where they're a little crazy. And none of this really made sense. But having said that, there was something within me that was telling me that this was true. So if everything was energy, you could, and nothing is created or destroyed. He explained to me, if you think of water, water is a liquid, and then you can heat it up, it can become steam. If you freeze it, it can become solid, and it becomes different, physically different forms. And of course, if you heat it all the way up, it'll just disappear. But it's still there. The energy of that water is still there. And I thought, okay, that kind of makes sense. And since we're also energy, and we, I'll go into more details on another video, we all vibrate at frequencies, then we can literally attract the things that we want in our lives. So I mentioned I'd mentioned later about the acorn shape with the wiggly lines. Well, if you think about an acorn knows it's an oak tree. It doesn't know any different. When you put that acorn seed into the ground, it just does its stuff to become an oak tree. It knows it's an oak tree. Animals are the same. They have these instincts where, a lot of them, when they're born, within a few minutes, they're running around, because that's the way it works in survival. You have to. And yet with us, we get born and we're completely helpless. And yet we have a mind that allows us to choose anything that we want to do or be. And yet we seem to have such a challenge trying to find a purpose and being authentic and being our true selves. And later on in another video, I will explain to you about this stick person that was drawn for me, and they explained exactly how the mind functioned, and I will definitely do that one next. I've just made a note to myself. So up until now, I was apparently living unconsciously. I thought I was conscious. I was walking around, running around, doing things, driving my car. No, I was living unconsciously. And not only that, my mind had been locked shut from when I was about 5 or 6 years old. So we talk about babies, children being like sponges. They soak it all up. And I was told that all my perceptions, all the things that I had heard and seen and listened to until I was about 5 or 6, had basically set uh, like a set of programs, parameters about how I would then view everything in my life, even from being a child of 5 or 6. They would stay with me now for the rest of my life. And that would be the filter of how I would see the world. And that was quite a shock to me. And yet, because of some of the challenges I was experiencing at that point in my life, I started to think back to some of my childhood and think about some of the difficulties I was having, and it was like the dots that this person was explaining to me were starting to join up a little bit. We'd not talked about the past. We'd not talked about all the normal things that I would normally be talking with someone. They'd be asking me about. This was completely different. So I now knew I had been running on a program since I was very little. This was a lot to take in at first. And it also felt true. It felt real. For the first time, I felt I'd start to understand something about what was going on within me. I was also told about the ego. Now, I just think of ego as, I don't know, somebody with a red Ferrari, or they've got everything, and that kind of is ego when a person attaches those things to their identity. And of course, it's not your identity. A car or a house or things in the physical world, that's not your identity. They're just things. Now, ego was also explained to me. It's been said that the ego is an old piece of programming that was around from when, I guess we were all cavemen and cavewomen and running around trying to avoid a dinosaur going past and figuring out how to get some food, etc. So ego is there, and it basically wants to maintain the status quo. It doesn't want you to do anything it perceives as dangerous. It doesn't want you to take any risks. It doesn't want you to, do anything that would make you feel uncomfortable. It just wants to keep you safe. It wants to keep you doing exactly what you've always been doing, and it will do everything it possibly can to discourage you from trying anything new that it thinks could hurt you in some way. So instead of, like being careful you don't get eaten by a dinosaur, that piece of programming, we don't have those survival things to think about anymore. And yet, there are so many of us who are not only living unconsciously, living with the programs that we were given as a child, but we are also being run by that little voice in our minds, which is the ego. And, I don't know if you want to admit that you talk to yourself, but I'm afraid we all talk to ourselves. Even when we don't realize we're talking to ourselves, we talk to ourselves. with little stories, little pieces of programming that I mentioned we got when we were children. They all develop into phrases, things that we say that we doesn't even register, that are about our perspective on life. And ego has its own list of things it likes to talk about. It certainly likes to remind us of anything that we've done wrong in the past, any failures. Oh, got to protect you, mustn't try that again, mustn't make a fool of yourself, always follow everybody else, just do what everyone else is doing, don't do anything different because, something bad might happen. Anyway, so we don't have a lot of those dangerous things, but nowadays we have things like social media. I mean, that wasn't even around when I was a kid, but social media. So when I was a kid, it was being with the cool kids. It was doing what they did, how people perceived you. Not being the last one to be picked when at school and they're choosing the two football teams. I would always be one of the last one or two to be picked. And of course now we've got social media, so unless you look cool on social media, or if something gets posted and it embarrasses you, and I'm not trying to belittle the effect that can have on people, young people, but at the end of the day, when I'm referring to the ego treats this as a danger, just like something that was coming along trying to eat you up in caveman days, and it's a danger. So it wants to protect you from those things. Don't put anything out there if it's going to make me look silly or feel silly, and other people will think bad stuff about me. I won't be one of the cool people. And what this means is that many people are living their lives in survival mode. Now, it may not be a surprise to you, but when you're in survival mode, I mean, if you're literally running from, real danger, your heart's pumping, everything in your body is like emergency systems on, and pumping more around your nervous system and all that sort of thing. Now, that's fine if you need to, avoid something. Maybe a bull's chasing you in a field or something like that. We need to do something. But if you're living your life all the time, 100% of the time, in survival mode, you're not meant to live that way. Your body can't handle living that way. You're permanently living in an uneasy place. So I've now learnt some things about the mind, just a few basic things, but these were big surprises to me. And after that, I personally became a little paranoid, because I think when you have a little bit of information, it can almost be worse than having a lot of information. But I had to, that was a lot of stuff I had to take in. So I started to second guess. What did I say? What am I thinking? Is this from my past? Is this from this? Is this ego? So if you feel that you've got a few of these things and now you want to start, please don't, just accept that we are all energy. That's one of the most important things. That we will learn how to live consciously, that we've been living unconsciously up until now. And that we have an ego, and we're going to learn to be patient with that ego. And we're going to understand and recognize when it's trying to steer us from growing and from doing the things that we really want to do in our lives. And this picture represents the place of where I choose to be all the time. I'm not there all the time because I'm not perfect, and I'm never going to be perfect. And that's again part of this wonderful part of our minds, that we can create, we can form all sorts of new ideas. And when we do form an idea, we can think of a better way of doing it, and then another better way, and then better and better, and improve and improve and improve and improve. And we will always be improving, and we will always be learning more. And that's why we're here. So we're never going to be perfect. But this is the picture. So discipline. Now discipline, I always understood, was something where you were in trouble. You may even get hit. When I was little, you know, perhaps get a little smack. And when you weren't doing what you were told to do, that was discipline to me. Being disciplined. Discipline, I've found now to be something completely different. Discipline is something that you can learn as you and I share with you how to become conscious in your life. You learn to promise yourself things, and you keep the promises. Have you ever promised yourself you're going to do something and for some reason you just never do it? Well, discipline is when you keep your promises, and you also learn that you can trust yourself. You can trust that when you do something, you say you're going to do it, you do it. That is discipline. And it's a true kindness and amazing feeling. It's like an ongoing set of gifts that you're giving to yourself. On the other side, you have surrender. Now, surrender sounds, for me, it always sounded a little bit like you just kind of give up, of course, you surrender, hands up. But it wasn't like that at all. Surrender is really, you stop forcing things. You understand that everything comes to you when you're calm. And we have some amazing powers. And these things only work in what we call the now, in the moment, and when we are calm. And that sometimes meant that I used to feel it was very counterintuitive. When I'd understood something, you just wanted to, right, now I get it, right. I'm going to be conscious. I'm going to really do this. And you kind of have to also let go. It's a strange thing to explain at first, but it's almost like if you ever grab some sand, and the tighter you grip it, the more it slips through your fingers. So you find that you just allow the energy we've been talking about to flow through you. And things will be happening not to you anymore, but through you. If you're hearing that for the first time, then just be patient, and we'll go into that more and more, and we'll go into more details in a lot of these things. But you get into a state of flow. And the best way I can describe this is I live in a Scottish, in a village in Scotland, and just down the road a little way there's the Clyde River. There's a little bridge that goes over that particular part of the river. And I want you to imagine that you're in the center of that bridge, and the water's flowing past. And of course, as it flows past, then it's like that's your future that's gone past. So you don't jump in and just continually live in your past. You still stay on the bridge. And you don't think about what's coming down the river. You don't worry about the future. You just, again, you stay on the bridge and you deal with things as they come along. Now, where this particularly is, there's some places where there's a few rocks and things, and of course it gets a bit ripply there and so forth. Now, the river doesn't stop, and it doesn't try and just knock the stones over. It just flows around it. As you know, you've seen with any river, they just flow around the rocks and they just keep coming. And I want you to think of those rocks as things that you will sometimes perhaps experience difficulty in trying to understand what's been going on with your mind, or trying to understand how to improve, how to, how do I fix this? How do I, and by the way, there's nothing to fix. There's nothing wrong with you. Everything you need is already inside of you. You were born with it. We just need to guide you in how to switch it on. And it will be you that can do it. That's why I call myself a guide. Because I can't do it for you. I can only do it for me. The person who taught me couldn't do it for me. But everything's there, and I can guide you to it. And when you've found them, then you will find, I believe, this sense of flow. If you'd like to know more, then I hope you'll subscribe to my YouTube, because I've got lots more to share with you. And if you would like some guidance on how your mind works, get in touch with me. My email's on the YouTube there. I found myself in a dark place because I needed to be a dark place at that time. It is said that suffering is sometimes necessary to literally kind of wake you up from the sleep that you've been in. And it can be an amazing opportunity. It can be something that you look back on, I certainly do, years later, and say, wow, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't now know what I know today. Okay, that's it for now. I'm going to get started on those other videos that I promised you about the stick person and self-image and all the other things I want to share with you. And thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you again soon. All the best. Bye-bye.